differ and where they do differ.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
Which outlet are you with?
Hong Kong Phoenix TV.
Oh,
Yeah.
good to see you.
We call ourselves the Chinese CNN.
Oh, okay. Very nice to see you.
Yeah, we call us CNN of the Alps.
Oh,
You know,
okay,
from,
great.
from Switzerland.
That's a nice
I was
place.
just
Do you like CNN?
no, I'm doing a show next week about, you know, people in Switzerland and in Europe. They still cannot understand. You know this probably, why the American society, politicians, but the media, why don't they take a harder stand against Donald Trump? Why they?
Would you see my column on Monday?
Yeah, I saw a lot of columns, but you know, I have my colleague here, and I'm doing it maybe for the web, you know. So I just wanted to ask you, what's the problem?
What?
How can you legitimize a candidate who is not democratic, who is a liar, who is just telling the things he says? Why don't you guys stand up harder against him?
Well,
I mean, you do, of course. I'm sorry.
The
So the
Post
Washington
does.
Post, yeah, there are some newspapers, but I'm talking of the cable net news worker.
Well, I think the biggest problem that the media is going to have to answer for when this is over is allowing Trump to monopolize time on the news, particularly cable news. Because when you looked at the percentage of coverage during the primaries that went to Trump versus any of the other Republicans, it was astonishing. And that was, I think, the product of two things. One, simply a quest for ratings, where Trump produced interest, produced ratings. There was probably a sense on the part of a lot of producers, this isn't going to last, it's a novelty, it's interesting,
That was
you know, which turned out to be wrong. And then there is this tradition of fairness between the parties that doesn't sort of admit to the fact that this is a very, to be very polite about it, unconventional candidate. I'm, you know, as an opinion columnist, I say dangerous candidate to the country. But I noticed even just in the last week a toughening up on Trump. And I think that he created a crisis for himself with his birther news conference. This notion that he could take 5 years of his life, throw it out the window in one sentence, and then try to blame Hillary Clinton for it. That he could call a news conference and use it to promote his economic interest at his hotel. You saw a real backlash against that. And I've never seen the New York Times do what it did on that Saturday after, you know, the day after, where they put the word lie in a headline at the top of the page in their lead story. That was amazing. And so I sense that the very critique you're making is having some effect where you simply can't treat Trump as a normal candidate, partly because he literally lies more than anyone has ever had to deal with. Politicians shade the truth often, but just outright, outright statements of untruth. And and also a sense that, this authoritarian streak that clearly runs through Trump. His statements on guns, for example, and Hillary Clinton. So I think you're seeing a change, and we can reconvene in 2 weeks and see if I'm right.
A late change, I think it's a too late change. I think I'm working on a public broadcaster, and we have to be balanced all the time. 25 seconds somebody here, 25 seconds there. Yeah. But I don't know why these guys don't do it. I just can't understand it, because they have a responsibility in a democratic society to label more clearly that this guy.
Well, I think just to go to your point about 25 seconds here, 25 seconds there. There's a deep ethic in the American political media that their job is not supposed to be taking sides in an election, and so that is the underlying ethic that Trump has taken advantage of. Luckily for me, I am in the opinion world where that ethic does not apply, so I can write what I write week after week. I think there are two tricky problems here. I think one is that there is such a clear narrative about Hillary Clinton that's accepted in the media that any development in stories related to her server, her emails, her speaking fees get kind of universal coverage. Trump scandals, I used the line once that Trump runs so many stop signs that the media can't give him tickets for all of his violation, but you do not violations, but you do not have the sustained coverage of each particular Trump scandal. And I think that also may start changing as people try to put together a picture of this person that is more accurate than the impression you get if you just, have something tossed out there and then it's let go. I mean, David Farenthal's story on his foundation deserves lots more attention. The stories on both Trump University and the Trump Institute, which no one even talks about, merit more stories. There are a whole lot of things that merit more attention, and my hunch is you're going to see it. And I don't just say that because I'm in the media. I've been a critic of how the media has treated Trump, and I actually am beginning to see some change. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they even had to say it on air. They said, now he just played us, last Thursday when it was and Jake Tapper was there. We more or less said he made a fool out of us, half an hour in this hotel and not coming up, and then one line, like you said. I mean, it's just, if CNN said me
and then
on
you see
air,
Trump himself, who's very shrewd about the media, is already worried about this, so he had that preemptive strike against I'm having a senior moment here. Lester Holt. Let me if you could do me the favor of not having my senior moment on there. Trump is clearly sensitive to this problem. He's very shrewd about the media, so he already had a preemptive strike against one of the debate moderators, Lester Holt, because he sees some of this coming. And it'll be very interesting to see how Lester Holt